Welcome to meditation. Meditation is giving value to that which is unseen, unknowable to the mind, underappreciated by those who are influenced the mind of doing, only recognizing value in doing, in achieving, and in what is shown, what is obvious. What is obvious is what we see, what we think, what we speak of, what we experience. To take any amount of time in meditation is valuable to ourselves. When one takes care of themselves, they take care of the world. As it is spoken in the Chinese wisdoms, Tao Te Ching, say the way to a peaceful society is self-governance. Because someone cannot govern their own agitation, their own greed, their own restlessness. They cannot live with their own guilt and regrets. They are called into doing. And if that doing is fueled by agitation, fear, underneath all violence is fear. So if action is fueled by fear, then of course one will perpetuate fear and emanate that fear around them. And in an attempt to reduce violence, all kinds of meetings and plans and treaties and contracts, all kinds of bodies of people, committees of people are set up to try and reduce violence. But unless one values being, a state prior to doing, one will never get to the root of violence and be confronted with their own fear. If you do not stand in the face, or in this case, sit in the face of fear, described in the scriptures as ignorance, then one lives according to it, acts upon it. But when we sit and observe without action, there's a great, great, great value in that, because we go to the root of fear. We face ourselves, the self that everyone is afraid to face, because it has no face, has no smell, no taste, no color, no experience, can produce no money, it doesn't own land, you cannot eat it. You cannot describe it. It is simply yourself. And its only quality, like space, is that it cannot be destroyed. Unseen but indestructible, ever present. And very, very few people give value to the power of indestructibility. What remains unable to change, unable to be destroyed, unable to transform into form, stays formless, and without which nothing exists. It is the very foundation of all existence. That's not nothing. It's the very momentum that gives rise to a thought, to a feeling, to words, to vision, to touch, to being human. With what power are we human? In meditation, we give this value. By not valuing the condition of the thinking mind, which is all based in form, what we see physically, what we touch physically, what we experience emotionally, what we think mentally, what we speak conceptually. And of course, we see this as it arises. We don't have to reject. But the self has become ignored. Underlying fear is ignorance. The self cannot be destroyed, but we have overlooked it, and it has receded in the background because we have made the form in the foreground so important, so much more important than meditation, than self. And we stay involved in all the catchy things which grab the senses and involve the thinking mind. And the thinking mind becomes agitated, and in that agitation, one is compelled to act, to do, to move, to distract. Morning till night, if one is living distracted, ignorant, fearful, then how will they achieve the purpose of their life? Happiness, peacefulness, restfulness, kindness, compassion, oneness. Can seem a very small gesture, just to sit, be still. But what we are confronted with in this power to sit for 1 hour, sometimes 2 hours, 3 hours in your day, is very powerful. It's transformative. We are transforming consciousness from the distraction, from form to space of awareness, consciousness, and bliss. Sat, Chit, Anand. Pure being, Sat. Pure consciousness, Chit. Pure love, Anand. Self-governance. Now it's a catchy word. Sovereignty. They say body sovereignty. There is no body sovereignty. This body is earth that we inhabited, and we have to give it back. What sovereignty is there? Our sovereignty is in our true home. Our dear friend Gudrun, I spoke to her the other day, and she brought a beautiful image that I would like to offer on her behalf. She was imagining those streets. I've only seen them in London, but there must be other countries that have them also. In the front, house after house after house, all joined together. All their little front, little patch of land in the front, and their little gate leading to the street. Separate, 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 separate houses. This is the appearance, the obvious. And she said, it's as if there's a little door in the back of each of these houses that open to a big, vast shared land at the back, but people have forgotten that there's a back door. And so all the jungle has overgrown that back door. And meditation is like discovering the back door out of the thinking mind into the jungle of pure consciousness. The freedom where there is no boundary, no mine and yours. But sometimes, because that door has been so long forgotten, ignored, sometimes it takes a little time to open that door. Hinges have become rusty. Big plants have locked its way on the other side. Slowly and slowly we are opening that door to pure consciousness, pure being, pure love. And that consciousness is shared by everyone, potentially. In the obvious, in the facade, front of the house, separate little lives. People going out, living their life, coming home. Going out, doing, coming home, resting from doing. But not really resting consciously, just distracting from doing. Maybe fighting with their kids or feeling the burden of their worries. How can I pay my bills? How can I get along with my family? How can I keep my family safe? And then again the next day, out the front door, doing. And there's nothing wrong with doing, but are we conscious? This is the point. We have to work. I also have to work. We all have to work, even if that work is just to feed ourselves, clean ourselves, and keep ourselves a shelter. There'll always be doing. Are we conscious? This is the point. Do we value consciousness, or do we stay in thinking? The thinking that is governed by duality, the ego sovereignty. The ego stance is that the value is what I present, how I appear, what I have, what I can boast of, what I can show. Ignoring the fear that underlies this duality consciousness. The fear that is the seed of violence, of hatred, of prejudice, of greed. Of destruction. There is no coincidence that we have been opened to realize the back door to consciousness and to value it. Amaram Ham, Madaram Ham opens this door because it speaks of the consciousness indestructible, unseen, like space, unseen but all-encompassing. Amaram Ham, Madhuram Ham, brings consciousness, existence, and love, Satchit Anand, to the foreground, brings it alive to be obvious, not hidden. So never mind how many thoughts come, many of them are agitating energies. You just sit through them, let them recede. They can be at the back. Bring to the front what you value most, yourself, which is the self of all selves. Value being, consciousness, and bliss, or love. The word is synonymous: love, bliss, consciousness, existing. Pure freedom, love, joy. It's your true nature. Those who are brave enough to be confronted with the ego mind and not make it important, not make it real, not make it provoke you into action endlessly, they are now incumbent to practice and transform their state of consciousness out of fear, out of destruction, out of division. You won't get a medal for it. You won't get an award for it. The leader of your country will not call you in recognition of your meditation practice. Even your family may not recognize this value. Even one's partner may not recognize this value. But this is very personal. It does not need recognition on the facade. Returning your attention, your self-worth to yourself. I am ever present, consciousness, existence, and love. And that Satchit Anand is indestructible, Amaram, and is at peace, Madhuram. This is true sovereignty, the sovereignty of your true nature. The body has no sovereignty. The ego has no sovereignty. It only imagines it has. It takes on a temporary custodianship of the body, then gets attached to its ideas, in the maze of confusion of thinking, and gets attached ultimately to suffering. It does not relinquish this body back to where it came, the earth, the water, the fire, and the air. I am space, pure space, Amaram, indestructible, at peace, full, content, Madhuram. That space is not nothing. It's Sat, Chit, Anand, pure existence, pure consciousness, pure love. Indestructible, ever present, unchanging. Amaram Ham, Adaram Ham. More than 100 thoughts have passed through your mind. But what you have valued is being more important than thinking. And you haven't valued the thinking such that you had to get involved in doing. So it doesn't matter how many thoughts arise. What matters, which means what is important, what is valued, is the power to sit through the changing, knowing yourself unchanging. It's always the basis of meditation to return to the very simple and very direct observation that you can all observe. Not something you've had to believe in or blindly accept. How do we sit in meditation? We are not acting on the thoughts that want us to move, to talk, to do, to think, to conclude, to judge. We are simply sitting, valuing being, valuing consciousness over thinking, being over action, unity, which is love, bliss, oneness, over our feelings, our experiences. And if we take some time to consciously value self, being, conscious, loving, then of course that door will be wide open and there'll be a complete openness to be in your house, but not bound in your house. House being your own body identification, ego identification, knowing there's always this openness to what is your true self. Ram Ham, Madhuram Ham. And although it is not always obvious, valuing meditation does start to color your life in inexplicable ways, unimaginable ways, not always obvious, but with maturity, transformation is more and more obvious. Small things that made you feel insecure and afraid don't grip you in the same way. Unnecessary thinking doesn't impress you and call you to action in the same way. The vibration of your consciousness starts to attract interesting conversation around you, meaningful, purposeful people in your lives, less drama, more real. And there'll always be a certain human drama, but we are not so shaken by it because we have built the foundation of knowing ourselves, Amaram, Madhuram, unchanging, ever-present and free. Free to inhabit this body, free to use words, to think, have feelings, but knowing there's always this door open, consciousness pure, love undivided. Amram Ham, Amram Ham.